Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back to Sports Today. There's obviously a test match going on, plenty of action, but the world of sport is such there's always something or the other going on, even beyond live matches and live cricket. So, what we're going to do in this video is quickly catch you up on a few things that have been happening in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some rest. Even though, considering all the developments that have been taking place, it's been a little tough on that front for a lot of people, not just, of course, sports journalists, but even fans. A lot of things have been happening, a lot of things to keep track on. So, busy time around, but of course, the things which I'm referring to, whether it be the India captaincy situation, the test match developments, all of that's already up on Sports Today. We're going to discuss a few different things. First up, there has been a lot of chatter started once again about a potential comeback for Prithvi Shaw. Now, of course, Prithvi Shaw, has made his debut for Indian Test matches all the way back in 2018, but ever since then has been found on the wrong side of whether it be the law or pretty much anything else. There's always just been a few issues with him, and when I say law, I don't mean literally, but yes, he did serve a suspension and whatnot. So there are definitely there have been issues there, often away from the field of cricket, that have impacted his comeback. And now, there, of course, he did end up getting a century recently, but someone who does have big hopes from him in a Sunil Gavaskar has also pointed out that there are a few things he needs to work on before he gets that chance to make a comeback. In fact, he said this recently on broadcaster. He said that, time for him to step up, him being Prithvi Shaw. But what has happened is that a lot of teams have found out that because of his predominant movement onto the front foot and his high back lift, they go the short ball way with him. So unless he learns to play off the back foot, he's going to struggle. If the pitches are such where the ball doesn't come up, then it will be fantastic for him. And it's an interesting observation, but also potentially opens up another hole that is there in, let's say, Prithvi Shaw's game. Because again, you would remember that one time where his own head coach, Ricky Ponting, very publicly called out his, deficiencies with the swinging ball. And then in that very test match, Mitchell Starc ended up castling his stumps with, guess what? A swinging ball. So there are obviously issues there to work out on if Prithvi Shaw is ever going to be in line for making a comeback into the Indian team. And speaking of players in the Indian team, Mukesh Kumar, who played the second test, which India won in Vizag, but of course dropped to the bench in this particular game, has been released from the test squad and will be joining up with the Bengal Ranji Trophy team to play in their next match. Of course, if you're thinking that this is some sort of a demotion or a dropping, it's not really that. It's simply a case of the BCCI ensuring that Mukesh stays game fit and get some valuable time out on the field under his belt, even though he's not going to be playing for India. In fact, to make things even clearer, in the statement that the BCCI released, they said that he will join up with the team in Ranchi for the fourth test. So there's definitely no, let's say, implications or anything of the sort that he's going to be dropped from the test side. It's just a case of releasing a bowler and keeping him fit. Some cricketing news beyond India. Sri Lanka completed a 3-0 ODI series clean sweep over Afghanistan, and Pathum Nissanka, someone who has often been, let's say, criticized for his approaches, was the star once again. Got a nice little century on his way, and in fact, he scored a fair few. Let's say he scored a couple of centuries in this particular series, ended as the highest run getter in the series. Of course, Sri Lanka beating Afghanistan in an ODI series will not be that much of a surprise, but given how Afghanistan have been recently in ODI cricket, particularly on subcontinent-like surfaces, still a good win for Sri Lanka, albeit one that was at home. And we're switching focus now from the world of cricket, world of football. There were some interesting developments in the Champions League. First off, Bayern Munich, who were struggling a lot. You'd remember they lost to Bayer Leverkusen at home in the Bundesliga. Well, they ended up losing their first leg Champions League round of 16 game to Lazio, courtesy a Ciro Immobile penalty. And in fact, that penalty led to Dayot Upamecano, who's Bayern's French defender, getting sent off. So 1-0 deficit for Bayern to overcome. Good times at the Bavarian Super Club. One super club who had no such problems getting business done was Paris Saint-Germain. Boosted by the return of Kylian Mbappe, they ended up beating Real Sociedad 2-0 in the first leg. So they have an advantage heading into the second leg. Pretty easy business really for them. Business as usual, many would say, especially with the player, the caliber of Kylian Mbappe coming back, coming off the bench. He got the first goal. Bacola got the second goal. Easy business as far as PSG were concerned. But the big upset of the night was, of course, the match, or let's say, the result that took place between Lazio and Bayern Munich. More football news, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who of course had purchased a 25% minority stake in Manchester United. Well, that deal has now been ratified and approved not only by the Football Association in England but also by the Premier League, which means that going forward, the ownership of Manchester United is 25% of Ineos, which is of course the company that Ratcliffe owns, but 75% and the majority of it is still owned by the Glazers as well as whatever shares are out there in public. The interesting thing and the real rider is that Ineos now has sporting control of Manchester United. So any sporting decisions that you will be seeing taken now is not going to be taken by the Glazers, they will be taken by Ineos. Of course, Ineos have a mixed track record in football, but given the Glazers' dreadful record when it comes to, let's say, footballing decisions, I think most United fans would just be happy with the change. Couple of quick news snippets from the world of international sports before we wrap up. Rafael Nadal, you'd remember, pulled out of the Australian Open ahead of the tournament starting with a muscle tear, and there were doubts as to when exactly he'd get that chance to make his comeback. It was mooted to be at the Qatar Open, but now he's come out and said, look, Qatar probably not going to be happening because I'm having difficulties even moving around normally. So playing tennis does seem like a bit of a stretch. He did give another timeline on his return, saying that I do anticipate being ready to play at Indian Wells, which is of course in the beginning of March. So still some time away, definitely not ideal in that regard, but Rafael Nadal, in what is expected to be his final year on the tour, continuing to be plagued by the same injuries that have blighted the latter stages of his career. Last but not least, you remember Red Bull Racing's, the Formula One team, their team principal Christian Horner. He was under investigation for inappropriate behavior at the workplace, and that investigation has seen him being interviewed one day for about 8 hours by an external barrister that the Red Bull company themselves brought in. And the investigation is nowhere near done, and there were discussions about whether or not Horner would be at the team launch, or the team's car launch for the 2024 season, which is of course slated to take place later on today on February 15th. Now news is saying that Horner will in fact be there despite the fact that he's very much under investigation as things stand. Whether or not there'll be any press over there, there'll be any press presence or even allowed to entertain questions in this regard, that's something that remains to be seen, but I'd be very surprised if anything of the matter of that nature was mentioned. More likely they'll just focus on the car and then get done with the entire, let's say, launch, and then hopefully they can conclude the investigation soon enough. That's it from us on this edition of the Morning Wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you enjoy our work, please don't forget, like, share, subscribe, tap that bell, leave us a comment, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Don't forget to download the SportsTech app, and if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos we've uploaded. Plenty more coming your way through the day, so stay tuned. For now, from my side, it's goodbye.